Hello and welcome to Sport for Business. We are in the midst of Olympic and Paralympic glory moments, and we're joined this morning by one of the brands that has been associated with both. A warm welcome to Eadaoin Keane, who is the head of marketing for Circle K Ireland.
Thank you, Rob. Nice to be here, and a great time to be here as well, with everything so positive happening with the Paralympics this week.
Isn't it just? It's been a fabulous summer and you've been across it. We'll kick off, if we can, with the Paralympics, and your namesake, Ireland Keane, got us off to a flying start at the end of last week, moving from bronze in Rio through to gold in the water. How special has it been building a relationship with the athletes in the Paralympic squad particularly?
It's been great. I mean, we've had great relationships with the athletes that have been our ambassadors, and then the athletes in general. They've got really behind our Here for Ireland campaign. So Here for Ireland being our campaign that kind of encompasses both the Paralympics and the Olympics. And it was a way for us to bring athletes closer to their communities. And a way for Circle K to use our role has been in every community pretty much in Ireland to do that. So the athletes have been great, and we found them really supportive, particularly of the Here for Ireland app, where customers were generating digital coins. But the athletes have been using that to fuel their own journeys, fuel their training journeys, pick up a few treats along the way, that they probably won't tell us about. But they've been really, really great and really positive. And anything we've asked them to get involved in, they've done it 150%, like they do everything, I suppose.
It has been like a very pragmatic way of actually offering support to them as well, because when they're training, when they're moving in between camps and things like that, they need to travel, they need to fuel both personally and in the vehicles. Have there been any moments, I guess, in some of your stores where you've heard of athletes being stopped and selfied and everything else while they've been in there?
I think maybe in the early days when more people were out and about. I know Kelly was probably a couple of times noticed in stores, and she would be very much a big user, particularly of our fuel, for getting around and traveling, for training and whatnot. So I think as things got quieter in the last year, there's probably a little bit less of that, and they were just able to go about their day. But yeah, I think we might see a little bit more of that now in the next few weeks as athletes come back, and their profile's a bit higher as well with the Irish public in general, and more of the Irish public have got to see how great they are.
I think that is the case, all right. Crossing over from the Olympics and the Paralympics and actually managing the brand across both of those, how difficult was it when the curtain came down in March of last year, and we realised that it was going to be 12 months at best before we actually had to have the games? What did that mean from your perspective in terms of planning, in terms of making sure that the messages were strong enough to actually last over that extended period?
Yeah, I mean, it was an eventful few months, because I only started the business, started with Circle K in the start of May, so about 6 weeks after lockdown started. And I don't think, you mentioned we knew 12 months that it was going to be pushed out. In March, we wouldn't have known. And there was still this thing of, maybe it's still going to happen. And they made obviously a call fairly early on, I'd say, that was going to be pushed out by a year. But we very much had to pivot, I think, because Circle K, as I've said, it's very much kind of, you look at the three circles: Circle K, the athletes and communities, and it was joining those three together. And the two ways we were doing that was, one was Here for Ireland. So in a way, that was a fantastic initiative in hindsight, because we stayed open. Our staff were essential workers and turned up every day to serve the needs of local communities. And we were still able to do that. People were still able to generate coins, and athletes were still able to use them for fuel when they could get out and about to go training. So that made it very easy for us, actually, in one way. The other way was, to ramp it up and get the momentum going, get people really excited about the games and about supporting the athletes. We were going to do that in a very physical way by having lots of in-store events and using our nationwide locations to bring people and athletes together physically as well. And obviously that had to be completely reviewed and changed, because that was just not an option anymore. So we very much had to pivot our way of thinking and look at new ideas and get our heads together and just be a bit creative. So last year, knowing it was going to be pushed out by a year, we did a few virtual events, and we marked the year out by doing a pass the torch ceremony, where we got people to download and colour in their torches, and athletes do the same and pass it from screen to screen. And did a lovely video to celebrate that. And then we used and engaged with some of the athletes just to highlight the Here for Ireland, the app, and that customers, even though things had shut down for the most part across the country, you could still generate coins for the athletes to use and still help them on their way to Tokyo, even though it was going to be a year out.
We're going to play out that video at the end of this interview so that we can finish that out. The ambassadors that you selected, Jordan Lee was one of those, and Jordan's story in relation to the Paralympics was just such a heartwarming one, and such a one of overcoming adversity, becoming an international basketball player despite having only one hand. Brilliant human interest stories. Were you surprised by the depth that we were able to actually discover from these athletes as human beings, as opposed to just elite performers?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of athletes do some talks for our internal staff, one being Shane, talking about how lockdown, affected his ability to train and interact with other people, and how you had to kind of dig deep to get that motivation to keep going, and to realize that actually you could even perform even better and train even harder in some ways. Jordan is an incredible guy. We actually got him probably about 2 months ago to do a bit of a session, a Q&A with our staff, and a lot of questions are asked about how he's found the last year, and where he's got the inspiration, when he knew it was a serious thing for him to do the sport that he does. And I tell you, if obviously he's very young, he's a lot of his career ahead of him in terms of sport, but he has a career ahead of him as a motivational speaker as well, because he was just unbelievable. He is very, very confident, but he really has a lot of tools in his box to dig into to find that motivation internally, and he works really, really hard. So I would think he's somebody, he should do a lot more talking about what he does and where he gets his motivation from, because he's really, really inspirational.
He certainly is, as indeed all of the athletes. Taking you back just a little bit to the Olympic coverage, you were very prominent in terms of sponsoring RTE coverage, which was both through the night and in the evening highlights programs. The postcard idea, which led to the stings that were created there, were a little bit perhaps more imaginative than we're used to in terms of a non-stop repetition of advertising stings on TV. Were you pleased with the reaction that you got from that?
Yeah, I was really, really pleased, and I was delighted with how that all kind of worked out, because we had we'd been working through the idea. We're at fairly advanced stages with the Two Team Ireland art competition, first of all. So it was probably less of an art competition than more a way of us making it easy for the Irish public to support the athletes. So the thing that really, really struck us talking to the OFI, who've been amazing to deal with, was the big thing around the Olympics. The difficulty for the athletes was going over there on their own for the most part, not with the Irish fans. Like, the Irish fans are the best in the world at international and global events. They really are. So they didn't have that, didn't have a lot of friends and family and a lot of the crew that they would normally have going over there. So, our thinking was like, how can we make it, how can we get that support tangibly over to them over there in Tokyo? So the idea of Two Team Ireland, which was that kind of art competition, came from that idea. So what we did is we had those postcards, we had post boxes in every single store. So 400 locations around the country, so that people could either write or draw their messages of support. So we were kind of working through and almost about to launch that when the opportunity came up to take the RTE sponsorship. And we just thought it was a really lovely idea then to bring some of the artwork to life on screen. So we were really we're showing that support to the athletes, but then we were also showing the Irish public the level of support that was coming from kids around the country. And it was just a really lovely sentiment there, and a lovely way to kind of wrap it all up, I think.
And we're in a business world where you have to actually produce results. It can't just be nice looking. Have you had a chance yet to evaluate the way that the partnership has actually delivered for the brand so far?
Well, because the partnership encompasses both Olympics and the Paralympics, it'll be another few weeks before we start getting into the real detail of that. What I can say is, we've got some top line numbers back as to how the broadcast sponsorship has performed for us, and it's improved our scores, probably above benchmarks for any of those types of sponsorships in the likes of us being seen as somebody that's really strong in local communities, a brand that brings Irish people and sports together, or bringing people together through sport. A lot of those markers have improved by 15-60%, which we're really, really happy with. So we can see that that has, worked for us in terms of people seeing Circle K as part of local communities. And for us commercially as a business, as well as getting close to communities, that is commercially important, because we are in 400 locations around the country, and it's really important to us that people see us, and we're top of mind for that.
It is, of course, and no brand should have to apologise for needing to get a business result out of the partnerships and the sponsorships. But it has been a real winner. We heard a lot from the athletes coming out of Tokyo and the Olympics, and we're hearing it as well from the Paralympics as they continue now, about the kind of the shortened window that we've got now going forward to Paris. I know that ahead of a full evaluation, it will be difficult to make a call on it. But do you feel as though there is a possibility that Circle K could be in this for the long run?
We can't really make a call on that right now until we kind of get all the figures back. Circle K, our first objective coming in, as a brand, when the brand came into Ireland, was around brand awareness. Then it was getting closer to communities. Now it's about making lives easier every day. So anything we're doing around evaluating the partnership and longevity and how we relate to with the OFI or Paralympics Ireland is really how those partnerships can align with Circle K, and how Circle K can align with them, so that we can help them, and then the partnership can help Circle K to achieve our own objectives as a brand as well. So there's probably a bit of work to do, I'd say, to look at our numbers and to also evaluate where the brand is going over the next 3 years. So we're right in the middle of that now.
It has been a winner so far, though, and hopefully will be into the long run as well. We'll moment Eadaoin Keane of Circle K. Thanks very much for joining us on Sport for Business today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.